Thank you. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield to myself such time as I may consume. I guess the first thing I want to point out, and there are other arguments that I want to make, but during Mr. Lewis's comments, and I have a great deal of respect for the gentleman from California, he mentioned that, George Washington never retreated. Well, as it happens, I just read a biography of Mr. Washington. Not to go puncturing holes in the myths of our great nation, he retreated a fair amount, actually. In fact, I don't know where we have gotten this idea that the great leaders of our time only went forward. We've heard about President Kennedy and President Truman. At one time or another, they retreated from a fair number of battles. Now, sometimes that was a wise and tactical maneuver to win the larger war, and sometimes it was a mistake, and history judges. But I think it does sort of portray the thinking of the president that the only way is forward, regardless of the details, and a little more thought, I think, might help us. And I'll return to that point at the end of my remarks. But the first thing I want to say, I think this is, by and large, a very good debate on a very important issue facing our nation. The only time I become troubled in this debate is when speakers on the other side say that this is just political and that this resolution is irrelevant. What they are saying is that the opinion of the United States House of Representatives on the most important public policy issue facing our nation today is irrelevant. The opinion of the People's House doesn't matter. Now, that explains a lot for the last 4 years while the minority party was in the majority, when they did not question this president, when they did not express their opinion in a way that would move us in a more positive direction. I feel very strongly that it is absolutely the responsibility of those of us in Congress who represent people, our constituents, to express our opinion. In a way, we're expressing their opinion. That's what we're supposed to be here in the House, the most directly reflective voice of the people of this country. So to say that this is irrelevant is just an absolute attack on the Constitution and the way this country is supposed to be set up. We must express our opinion on the most important issues of the day. And then we come to the next issue, which is you can't question the commander-in-chief. He's the guy in charge. He knows more than the rest of us. You can't question him. It undermines everything. And let me say I express a certain amount of sympathy for the view that we should place faith in the commander-in-chief. That's a good part of the reason why I voted for this resolution 4 years ago. A little more than a year after 9/11, our president was saying to us, to prosecute the broader war on terror, I need this authority. And I had my doubts, but by and large, I want to be supportive of the commander-in-chief, recognizing the power he has. But the question I have for the minority is, for how long? How many mistakes does this president have to make before we don't have an obligation, not just a right, but an obligation to express our disapproval and try to get him to move in a different direction? Books have been written, more than I can count, about all of the mistakes that this president has made in Iraq. Books not written just by opponents of the war, many of them written by proponents. Outraged that they took their idea, that the president took their idea and made such a hash of it. We have an obligation at some point to stand up and say, enough. Mr. Commander-in-Chief, I'm sorry, but based on 4 years, we do not trust you enough to give you a blank check anymore. We have to express our opinion. And that is what this resolution does. And let me also assure you, we want to win. We, on this side of the aisle, recognize everything that has been said on that side about the threat that al-Qaeda and their followers presents. We will fight them anywhere, anytime, because we recognize that threat. In fact, I believe that there is al-Qaeda in Iraq and we should fight them. But what we are talking about specifically today, and Mr. Boyer mentioned the 21,000 troops, that is the aspect of the plan that we focused on, precisely because that is the aspect of the plan that is most wrong, that does the exact wrong thing, sending 21,000 U.S. troops to fight in a civil war that has been better described by some of my other colleagues, so I won't go into it any further, that they cannot possibly sort out the bad guys from the good guys, is the exact wrong thing to do. Given that feeling, and I've personally thought about this a great deal. I met with the president on a couple of occasions as he outlined this plan. I talked with many soldiers who have served, got many opinions on this, and have come to the honest conclusion that it is a mistake, that it undermines our ability to win that larger war against al-Qaeda, which is the war we are fighting. And given the fact that I feel that way, I would be betraying everything that I said I was going to do when I got elected if I didn't, on the record, express that opinion. And that is what this resolution does. So I know this hope will go unfulfilled, but I would hope at a minimum that the minority can stop saying that the opinion of this House is irrelevant. If they feel that way, they should all just go home. All right? It matters. You may disagree with the opinion we're expressing. I urge you to vote no if you feel that way. But I don't feel that way. I feel we need to tell the Commander-in-Chief that he has led us down one too many blind alleys. We disagree with him. We want him to change course. And that is the will of the people's House being expressed by us. That is not just our right. It is our duty as members of Congress. And with that, I will yield 5 minutes to the gentleman from Maine, Mr. Allen.
The gentleman from Maine is recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Speaker, I thank our Speaker and the Majority Leader